Hey, Premier Investors, it's Adam Schroeder here with another episode. And we are going to talk about some of our new markets that we have going on in Alabama with the team that I've worked with for years and years now. I think I've known these two guys for about the last 7 or 8 years, working together and seeing a lot of the properties they've been running through. We have Robert and Frank with us today. So thanks for taking some time out of your day from selling all the properties and talking with us and our investors.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they think of Alabama, they think, and no offense to y'all since you live in Alabama, they think of the man playing the banjo on the front porch. Especially, if you live on the coast, if you don't live anywhere near it, that's kind of the stereotypical thing that the people have with Alabama. But and that's kind of what I thought whenever I started working with y'all, honestly. And then I started researching the state and realizing that it is in no way, shape, or form what the state is. So tell us a little bit about, we're in the surrounding, focusing on the Birmingham and kind of between Birmingham and Huntsville areas. Tell us a little bit about what it is in that area that really kind of is driving jobs, is driving growth, just on the very macro level. We're going to get a little more micro in a little bit, but just on the macro level.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to go?
No, you got it.
Okay. Well, on the macro level, you're right. You could probably find somebody with a banjo here in Alabama, but that would not be the majority of people. Neither of us have a banjo nor play the banjo. We've seen it on TV, but don't think we have any relatives. I don't own any overalls or anything like that. So yeah, while we're not the same size city as maybe where some of the investors who live on the coast are, Birmingham is going to be roughly 1.5 million people, I think, in the greater metro area. Coleman is halfway in between Birmingham and Huntsville. So going up to Huntsville's in the news a lot, I think, because of the aerospace industry that's there. There's a lot of engineering that's there. Who is it? The not Air Force, Space Force is moving their headquarters there. The FBI is building a second headquarters there. So it's a high tech and engineering kind of city. But back down here in Birmingham, which is where we're located, this is the largest city in Alabama. Got a lot of major employers that are here. Anything from UAB, the University of Alabama at Birmingham, which has a huge medical and research center. I think they employ about 38,000 people here in the greater Birmingham area. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama is based here. You've got financial services like Regions Bank and Protective Insurance. Yeah, Protective Life. There's several major employers. Southern Company, Alabama Power is based here. So there's a lot of finance and medical and banking, et cetera, that's here in Birmingham.
Yeah, I know in kind of Birmingham and Huntsville have both been growing significantly. And it seems like, are they at the point where they're kind of bouncing back and forth in terms of which one's the biggest, or is Birmingham still a ways ahead?
Birmingham City, as Huntsville City has actually surpassed Birmingham, but the metro is not even close.
Yeah. And that's an important thing for people to know, for investors to know. If you just Google Birmingham, you're not going to see the greatest thing. It's going to look like, a slight population decline. And you're going to think, oh my goodness, why would I go into an area where there's population decline? We are not selling. We're not investing in Birmingham proper. Exactly. If you look at the population of the suburbs, the surrounding suburbs, they're exploding, which is why the metro area that they're talking about is so in demand for investors. So you have to look, it's very specific. And it's why you can see these areas if you Google some of the markets that we're in. We have the market data packets on the website. But if you kind of look at these areas, you might see a smaller population, but it's because they're suburbs, right? Like if you look at the suburbs of Austin, where I am, I live in a suburb and there's 15,000 people, but it's a part of the Austin metro, right? So talk a little bit about some of the big suburbs around there, the ones that have had the most growth. Maybe not necessarily the ones where we have the most properties right now, but just kind of what direction does it seem that the growth in the Birmingham area is? Is it north? Is it south, east, west? Where's the big growth coming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, it's growing kind of all ways, but historically South started first. But we're seeing now the North side growing towards Huntsville a little bit quicker than some parts of the South, just because pricing is becoming a little bit of a factor for a lot of people, so affordability. And so, we're seeing the growth north and then also west towards Tuscaloosa, which is another major city or big city that we have that's only 45, 50 minutes from Birmingham. And you have the Mercedes plant, University of Alabama, things like that. So it's kind of that Northwest that's happening right now. Granted, South is still happening because it is, our wealthiest county in the state is Shelby County, which is located in the south part of Birmingham. So that's kind of where the growth is kind of happening right now.
Again, let's go out to Tuscaloosa, and I'm willing to talk about it, even though Alabama's there. But this is an area. This is an area where, in talking with y'all about just the rental market there, it's not student housing that we're investing in here. It's a little bit farther away from the university, like what, about 15, maybe 20 minutes away from the university. Like I said, it's not student housing. You're renting to the people who are, working at the school, driving into Tuscaloosa. There's some people who've considered doing short-term rentals in the area. I don't know if that's, we haven't vetted it out for that, but because it's close enough, people have considered it. But talk a little bit about what you've seen in Tuscaloosa in terms of both appreciation, but also the rental demand and growth that you've seen.
Yeah, rental growth and demand in Tuscaloosa, it is probably year in and year out our most consistent market as far as demand goes. And you're absolutely right. We're the houses that we're selling for rentals are not student housing primarily because most students want to be within walkable distance of the university. So this is geared more towards whether it's university employees, faculty, staff, administration that are willing to drive 10, 15 minutes. Robert mentioned the Mercedes plant that's right outside of Tuscaloosa. We've got 2 or 3 neighborhoods that are right around that area as well. Mercedes employs about 6,000 people there. So driver for the rental demand as well. So it's a very strong market. When anybody asks us about, where would you invest if you just want consistent demand, Tuscaloosa is always going to be near the top of the list. It's been that way for years.
Yeah, roughly 50% of the people that are living there are renters. So the homeownership rate's a lot lower, and there's just a lot of variety of tenant mix. And so that's why we've seen, consistent demand for the past, 20, 15 years.
Yeah, I will say it's kind of nice. I know people hear the 50% and think maybe, oh, that's lower than normal. A lot of times whenever you get into areas that are about 50% or a little bit below, a little bit above, you start running into professional tenants. And professional tenants
Mm.
keep your house much nicer than you would think. I invest in Memphis, which is a 50%. It doesn't have, it's not new construction, so I don't get that benefit of those. But it has the most professional tenants of any city that I've ever invested in. Like when they leave, things are good because they know, oh, if I mess up and this gets on my record, if it comes back that I get evicted or something like that, it's going to get to my next landlord and I'm going to have problems. And not only is Tuscaloosa, like you said, a good rental market, but I mean, we're talking 230 to $300,000 homes. I mean, it's not, it's good rental demand and it's not a high price point for new construction.
Yes, for the entry level is very affordable. Because there are places where you get into the 300s, but there is 230 in new construction. I don't care what market you're in. That's just really hard to find.
It seems like is Alabama roughly like $150 a square foot or something like that for build price.
Yeah, correct. With
Okay.
land, correct.
Yeah. All right. And yeah, it's like you said, it's a younger county as well. I mean, I think whenever we were doing our research on it, and I'm guessing it's because of the students. It's only like the median age is about 28 years old. So if you look at kind of the trends of the country, if you've got a median age of 28 and when people are actually buying their first home, you've got a renter for 7 years before they're buying their first home at this point in time. So it's a nice solid area there. Um, Let's talk about another market that you said y'all were surprised at whenever it came to kind of the rental market. And so, moving away from Tuscaloosa, now we're going to look into the Kimberly market. We were talking a little bit about this beforehand, and we looked at it and realized there's an insane amount of money, and there's a lot more rental demand and pricing than you were expecting. So, tell us a little bit about the Kimberly market.
Yeah, Kimberly's kind of, Robert mentioned this earlier, that, whereas the initial growth in Metro Birmingham was pushing south along the I-65 and the 280 corridors. A lot of it's going north now along I-65, heading up towards Huntsville. So Gardendale, which is another city, and we may talk about that here in a little bit, is kind of just north of town. And then Kimberly's just a little bit further. So you're only talking about probably 20 minutes from the downtown Birmingham area. But yeah, the average income there is pushing 100,000. I think it's like 96, 97,000, which is substantially higher than the average in Alabama, and I think even the national average. Average housing prices are in the 300s there. I think 330, 335, something like that. Very strong schools there, very oriented towards families or young professionals that want a relatively easy commute, but with kind of a little bit more of a quiet place, that they're not right down in the downtown area.
Yeah, and we have properties in Kimberly ranging anywhere from like 260 up to 335, kind of where you were saying that midpoint there. And one of the things when we were looking that we were shocked at was the home ownership rate that's in the,
Right.
likely based on some of the numbers we've seen are in the 90 percentile. So if you've got good schools and a 95% home ownership rate in an area that the average income is 96,000, and I think whenever I was doing my research on Alabama, the average is like 65 to 70,000 in Alabama. I mean, you're talking about an area that can afford to buy these homes, whenever you're looking to sell in, 7, 8 years, plus, you're going to see some pretty good appreciation whenever, that's all said and done. Plus, you've got, 5 to 10% of people who are renting. And so you've got people who want to come in and get into those good schools that Frank was just talking about and can really drive up your rent rates over time. So I don't know. Have you all heard anything from the property management team about like lease up times or anything like that in the area?
Yeah, we're averaging about 2 weeks on that, and that's one of the things that's really was eye-opening is they've been pushing for us to have more homes up there because, as you said, 95% of the people are homeowners. But I think that would go higher if there was more options, and that's been the biggest thing is there's no competition on the rental side, and that's why we're, renting these houses so quickly.
Just kind of we talked with the team in Texas, like, well, there aren't many rentals, so we just threw out a number, and then whenever that rented that quickly, we thought, oh well, we better go higher.
Yeah,
And
right.
so
Yeah, I know we're thinking, dang, did we go a little too low on the rent rate? But no, the numbers work, and so we're excited about the market.
yeah, and if the numbers work now, just imagine what they'll look like in 3, 4, 5 years. Because I know overall, when we talked in the past, I think y'all were telling me that the average rent growth in Alabama is like over has averaged somewhere around like was it 5% or
The
something?
the appreciation on the home price is about that 5 to 6, 7%, but rental is around that 3 to 4%, depending on across the board. But obviously, some areas are higher than others.
Yeah, I love and you make it seem like a 3 to 4% rental increases. Yeah, that's, you
Yeah,
got
I
to
know.
suffer. You got to suffer through that.
Yeah, but see, we don't have the downs, so we're a consistent market. We're not the Californias or the Floridas, we're that very stable, what we call a very boring market for investors, basically. And that's what we found is investors that are looking for that. They find Alabama very attractive. Plus, second lowest property tax state in the country.
Yeah, and I would argue you're the lowest because the lowest one is Hawaii, and if Hawaii had a real property tax rate, nobody could live there, even though nobody can already afford to live there. So it's the lowest tax rate for a place people can afford to live in the
It's the
country.
lowest tax rate, and I think one other thing, and you know this, Adam, that we've talked about before, it's also very landlord friendly. And I know a lot of investors who live in other parts of the country live in places where it's much more geared towards the tenant side of the equation. So it's nice to live in a state where landlords actually have rights. And, hopefully none of us ever have to deal with evictions in the properties that we own. But if we do, the laws are supportive of you being able to do that.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize to everybody, Frank and Robert aren't just, building and helping sell the homes. they're investors themselves. I mean, they've got their properties. They're they're drinking the Kool-Aid just like us. So you're not just talking with people who are giving you the theory of real estate. You're talking to people who are giving you the experience, just like we here at Premier Turnkey all have experience in the real estate world. You are dealing with real investors who can give you the real numbers and the real stories. I think everybody has an eviction story, even though none of us want to have an eviction story.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it
and
just comes with it.
yeah, and if you don't have an eviction story, you haven't been in the game long enough, and maybe you're not the one you should be talking with, right?
Yeah.
So let's get on to the appreciation markets. I mean, even though all of these properties that we're talking about, there's a way for all of these properties to cash flow and be good solid ones in that. But we know that you can't eat appreciation, but you sure can enjoy it whenever you do a cash out refi or HELOC or sell the property, and that's really where the wealth growing begins and where you're able to scale your portfolio. So y'all targeted two markets that you said you wanted to talk about today for kind of the appreciation angle if investors want to go that route. Why don't we start with Alabaster, which I'm sure nobody listening to this has heard of before. So tell us a little bit about that area and why you think it is an option for continued sustained growth over time.
Yeah. So Alabaster, south of the city, where historically the growth has happened. Located in Shelby County, which is the wealthiest county in the state of Alabama. The unemployment rate is 1.7, which is below the national average.
It's like half the national average right now.
It's very low. It's a very family oriented community, city. It was roughly how many people? Roughly 35,000 people
in that range.
They have a really strong football program. That's a very big thing here in Alabama. Football is king.
Yeah, kind of perennial state champions there. So.
Yeah. And like I said, Shelby County, anything in Shelby County typically is going to have very good appreciation because the school ratings, that's what we always find is one of the biggest, besides population growth and median income, is the school ratings. And, they're at the top of the school ratings, and people are wanting to have their kids in there. And so they're willing to pay more. And so that's why if you're able to get into those type of markets, you'll be able to see returns, in 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's one of the reasons why whenever I started looking at Alabama, I really liked the Coleman area was because of they had a pretty highly rated school system there as well, and the entry price point was there. I'm trying to remember the entry price of Alabaster. It's a little on the higher side, I believe, like 375 or so, but based on the income level there, it sounds like it can support quite a bit higher.
Yes, and we do have the averages at 3.7. There's some that are a little bit lower on the lower side of the threes. So it's kind of just when it comes available, we tend to tell our investors, hey, it's not going to be here for very long because a primary buyer is going to scoop this up very quickly.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so now we'll go into Gardendale. This is one that has a pretty significant income. It's not like Kimberly. It's somewhere around like the $80,000 median household income we found whenever we looked at it, and looked like the home ownership rate was around the 81%, which is, for people to reference, if you don't know, the U.S. home ownership rate is right at 65%. So you're talking about significantly over that when it comes to home ownership. But where is Gardendale in relation to the city, and what made y'all think about this one as an appreciation play?
Yeah, Gardendale's just north of downtown Birmingham. So probably of all the communities that we've got homes available in, it's the closest. It's probably 10 minutes, into the downtown area. So you're getting the advantage of a suburb. You're just heading north of town before you're getting into that. But yeah, so you've got access to everything that we talked about earlier, as far as the downtown Birmingham area, not only the employers, but the restaurants and the shops and all the rest of that. And yet you're, 10, 15 minutes max away from there. So it's a very easy commute for people. It's an attractive market. There's a lot of people that are looking for housing, both primary ownership as well as rentals. So we like it a lot. There's a strong, steady demand. As soon as we can get rental houses available, they're not sitting very long before tenants are looking to move in.
Yeah. All right. So there are going to be some people listening to this who are going to say, "Well, they're just telling us all the benefits and just all the beautiful places in the area." But some people are listening to this and aren't gonna they're gonna make a mistake and not purchase through Premier Turnkey. And so tell them some areas in the surrounding Birmingham areas. Which are there some areas that you would say, maybe stay if you're an investor searching it out, maybe stay away from these parts.
That's a good question. Definitely anything that's in Birmingham proper. There's definitely opportunities there, but you have to just look at what's going on. I mean, what's the street over look like, things like that, because there is a lot of lower income type things. And then one that I think is a very, very good market, because the schools are so great, but there's a lot of competition, is the Chelsea market. It on paper looks fantastic, but we just had a little bit struggle if we're in the slow season of renting, because it is so school oriented, that you find your leasing times a little bit longer. But like I said, it's still a great market, but we tend to see a little more competition on there because there's a lot more available inventory.
Okay, so that might be an area where good to purchase during some times of the year, but
Correct.
hold off on other things. Frank, you got any suggestions for people?
Well, just to piggyback on what Robert said about the Metro Birmingham, a lot of times when we're talking to investors, they will start giving me their buy box, and they're thinking about it from where they live. And so they're thinking about, hey, I want it to be walkable. I want to be able to walk to the store, or walk to my job, ride my bike, or whatever. And I get where they're coming from and how that works in their particular community. But we live in a place where people commute everywhere. Like we don't walk anywhere. We're hopping in our car to drive to the grocery store, to go to the whatever, wherever the location is, to our job, etc. So just realize, yeah, the whole walkable aspect. Now I would say there's some young urban professionals that are, renting the revitalized condos or whatever in the downtown area. My daughter, who's an artist, goes downtown. Her art studio is an area that I really would prefer her not to be there, doing her art, because it's a huge crime rate. But it's, sometimes it's trying to talk into these 20 somethings that, of why that's maybe not the wisest thing in the world. That kind of goes over their head. So anyway, just want to encourage your investors, when they're thinking about it, realize, we are kind of the local market specialists. We live here and we invest here and we help other people invest here. And so usually when we're trying to point people to particular communities or steer them away from particular communities, it isn't because of a bias. It's just the reality of us just knowing kind of where the demand is going to be, and where their opportunities are going to be for growth on an appreciation side, as well as rental demand.
Yeah, and I want to tell people right now in these communities, we're working with Robert and Frank's team to provide some pretty significant incentives to the investor. You can see them on the website premierturnkey.rei.com, but we're able to get you up to 11% of incentives to use towards your purchase. And so you can look at that and you can get your rate down to 5.5%, 5 3/8, somewhere in that range. You can get pretty much all of your closing costs, well, actually not pretty much, but you can get all your closing costs covered and get cash back afterwards. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with 11%. You can just take it as basically half your down payment back. So go to the website premierturnkey.rei.com and you can find all of their inventory there. Schedule a time to talk with us here so that we can get you pre-approved. We can make sure we understand your goals, and we can help you identify the properties that'll work best for you, and see if Alabama is a good fit for you. So head on over there, premierturnkey.rei.com. You can scan the QR code in this video to schedule a call as well. And don't forget, people, you can live how you want when you invest where it's smart.